Hi there, thanks so much for joining me. I'm going to show you how to make a pen and ink style stippled effect in ArcGIS Pro. Pen and ink style where you like drop a bunch of dots, dot, 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 with a pen like you would if you were drawing something and it gets denser along the edges of something. It's just a nice looking, attractive, charming, sort of tactile looking way of shading with pen and ink. And we're going to replicate that effect in ArcGIS Pro digitally with these vectors. So I'm starting with just a simple shape of the world, or at least the world's lands, drawn by Dylan Moriarty. Now this data set is available to everybody for free at Project Linework, and it's a great resource. I'll link to it. So by default, we've got just a solid fill and a solid stroke. But let's look at goofing around with a stippled effect using a marker symbol. So I'm going to go into the structure tab, which is that wrench. I'm just going to obliterate this solid fill. We don't need that anymore. And I'll add a symbol layer called marker layer. So we have fill layers, which makes sense. Stroke layers make sense. Marker layer, what's that? So let's choose this. And okay, I've got a shape and it's repeating within my polygon. That makes sense. I'm going to make this relatively small, let's say 1.8. So more than 1, less than 2. And we'll scroll down here and look at these marker placement settings. We definitely want to fill the, well, let's just see what we've got so far. Okay, very grid-like. I did not draw this with a pen, right? There's no effect, there's no illusion of hand-drawnness here. Fill polygon, yes. Clip at boundary, yes. Position, fixed. Ooh, random. Now that's tempting looking, all right? Let's just see what random looks like. Exactly what we want. This is great. Okay. Now, X step and Y step just means how frequently it drops a line in this direction versus this direction. If you wanted to, I'll show you really quickly. So let's make it a very small X step. The effect is kind of a horizontal banding, which is cool. Not necessarily what we want right now. So I'll put that back to 16. And then you've got this thing called seed value, which there's no such thing as random. Really, they say random, and the notion of randomness is a philosophical illusion, especially in computer science. Computers hate random. Boy, do they work hard to make something that looks random. And it's never really random. It's pseudo-random, but they call it random. Seed value is, let's just roll the dice and land on a 13, and that's where we're going to start our random looking pattern. So if you play with this, it'll just shift the pattern a little bit. And once we start stacking versions of this up on each other, we're going to change the seed value so that they don't just render right directly underneath each other. Okay, now I just said make copies of this. What does that mean? I'll go back to the structure tab, and I'm just going to duplicate this. So I'll duplicate this, and if I hit apply right now, it should look exactly the same because my pseudo-random points are just rendering right on top of my old pseudo-random points. We haven't reshuffled them. We haven't changed their density or anything like that. So I've duplicated this. Now I'm going to add an effect, one of my absolute favorite effects for ArcGIS Pro Symbology, which is donut. The donut effect. Donut effect. What the deuce is a donut effect? Well, I've added it, and the best way of learning is to try things out and see how it looks. So we've added the donut effect. Let's come down here and see its properties. I always like to set things to round because it's a more forgiving visualization in Pro. And my option, I'll choose accurate. I'm not in a hurry, so I'll choose accurate. And the donut width. Okay, the width is really, right now it's kind of, boy, how do I illustrate this? I'm going to show you what a donut is by just adding a donut effect to a solid fill to give you an idea. So I'll come here, temporarily add back my fill layer. I'll give it a donut effect. See how it's kind of hollowed it out except for the innermost 2 points or 20 points? That's how you draw like an inner ribbon effect. Isn't that neat? I think so. So let's get rid of that. Okay. And we'll come to the Layers tab, select this topmost one, which we've given a donut effect. And now, well, actually, again, I've chosen accurate. Down here for marker placement, it's just a matter at this point of making these smaller and smaller numbers so that the dots draw in more densely. And I'm going to make this, golly, let's say, let's go 10. Every 10 points, drop a dot. Every 10 points, drop a dot, you know, with its pseudo-random multiplier. And then the seed value, I'm going to change it. And just for the sake of my brain, I'll make it the same as my X and Y step. Doesn't really matter, just so they don't render underneath each other. And I'll hit apply. And I'm wondering why I don't see anything changing. Oh, let's get rid of this guy. Apply. Oh, it's because I never changed my donut width away from 2. Okay. See, everybody makes mistakes, and I make the most mistakes. So let's really ramp this up to show stippled dots within like the inner 60 points. Okay, that's more like it. Whew. Okay, so it's kind of hard to tell here, but I've got some stippling, but then in the inner 60 point buffer of my lands, I've got another layer of even more dense stippling. At this point, I'm just going to start stacking this effect up. I'm going to duplicate this layer, go back to the layers, and I'm going to decrease this. I'll say, let's make it 40 points now, so it's a little bit narrower band on the inside of the polygon. I'll decrease its step to say, let's say 8. I'll just monkey with the seed value so it's different. And we'll roll the dice, and we've got more stippling happening, tighter along the coastal edge. Fun. I'm just going to do this a couple more times, because if something is good, maybe more of that thing is even better. I'll decrease this. I'll make it 20 points. And decrease the X and Y steps so the dot pattern is denser. And apply. You can see we've got this kind of lovely built up effect happening here. Let's keep going. Push it. So my width, in this case, I'll make it 10 points. Pretty dense stippling at this point. And I really like what's happening here. You're getting some really nice stipple density here, and it's a lot easier than actually stippling with a real life pen. Let's add one more layer and make it pretty dense stippling. And we'll keep it pretty close to the coast. Just let's say the inner 6 points, like a little band along the coast, is where we'll render these, and we'll make them, I don't know, density of 3, I don't know, 2, let's see. That's too much. 3. We'll tweak this. Hit apply. Very cool. And we still have that outline down there. Let's turn that off and just see what it looks like with only stippling. Very pen and ink. It's a cool style. Now, when I'm doing pen and ink, I also like to use like a bold inked outline around my shapes. So let's pull this line back and I'll just apply that really quickly. And if I were drawing this with a pen and ink, I wouldn't have an impossibly crisp tan line, right? That's very vector, very computer. We want this to look like I'm actually scribbling with a pen or carefully drawing with a pen anyway. So there's a neat little trick in the structure tab. You can apply, add effect. There's something called wave. What wave does is it just introduces a little bit of wobbliness. I don't know if you can see that. Let me just make this black so you can see it. Okay, it adds a little sine wave to my line. And if I look at the properties for this, I can have a sine wave, but like I said, that doesn't necessarily look all that hand-drawn. But randomness affects kind of this hand-drawn quality. And if you go random, then it's a little bit more jaggy and inconsistent, which is what my shaky hand would do. And I can make it less, give it less of a height or a longer pattern. So increasing the period is the length of the wave. I remember geometry, increasing the amplitude is like the height of that wave. Let's make it, I don't know, 2 and 5. And we'll give this line like a pixel stroke of 1. Let's just hit apply and see what we've got going. Very cool. This is actually pretty close. That looks very good. Now, one thing that I might do in this case is start stacking up a couple of semi-transparent versions of this to replicate a little bit of ink bleed or the irregularity of ink being dropped down on paper as you scrape the nib or the ball across that, that surface. So I'll come here and I'll make this color, instead of solid black, I'm going to make it semi-transparent black. I'll give it 40% transparency and hit OK. You can see that lightened it up a little bit. And if I hit apply, my coasts are a little bit lighter now. And I'll come back to this structure tab. And as I am wont to do, I'll duplicate this layer. So now I have 2 wobbly stroke layers. And I just need to mix up this pseudo-random wave effect a little bit so they aren't overlapping each other perfectly. I'll make this a longer period, and I don't know, I'll make this 1.8 points or something like that. So you can see how these are a little bit different from each other. And the additive effect here is a little bit more like an actual pen stroke. So I'll hit apply. And we're getting very close. Let's just do one little trick. I'm going to show you. All secrets revealed. I'll go back to the structure. I'll duplicate this one more time. And you can see that by default, there's a dash effect. And the dash effect is turned on, but it's there waiting for me to use it. So let's go see what that looks like. Come back to the layers, and I'll look at the properties for this symbol layer and expand the dash effect. And just choose one of these. These are called, well, I call them a dash array. This is called a dash type. You can change it in this dash template here. So on, off, on, off, on, off, that can be encoded as a sequence of numbers. On, space, off, space. So 2 points of ink, 6 points of no ink. So the pen is down, the pen is up as you draw your line. We can hit apply and see what that looks like. It shouldn't look any different. The effect now that I'm going to go for is to have a little bit of ink bleed at an irregular distance. So I'm going to make this quite thick, and I'm going to make it very semi-transparent. So it's just a very faint effect. Let's say 80% transparent. And then I'm going to go down here and just type in a somewhat random. So I'm going to have a short bit where the ink bled, and then a long stretch where there was no ink, and I'm going to do a couple versions of that. And you can have a whole series in this dash template as long as you separate it by a space, and it starts with on and then off. So let's do that. I'll do 2 pixels on, 22 pixels off, space, 1 pixel on, 13 off, 3 pixels on, I don't know, 40 pixels off. And let's just see. That'll give us a pretty random looking splotch pattern. And the effect is subtle, but you can sort of see how I've got a little bit of ink bleed here along the coast. And the effect is something that looks a little bit more imperfect, like my hand drew it and I'm drawing it on paper and the ink is coming out at slightly irregular flow. So the goal of any hand-drawn effect is to add irregularity and imperfections, because digital crisp vector stuff is perfect and computers do perfect work, but you want to add some irregularity and human wabi-sabi into this stuff. Now the cool thing about computers, after I'm just gotten done bashing computers, is, you know what? This looks pretty much hand-drawn, but if I zoom into this really interesting area, boom, it just redrew it again for me that fast. And if I wanted to have a different projection, I could just change the projection and it's happy to redraw for me. I don't actually have to sit here with pen and ink and redraw something if I decide to change the composition at all. I mean, that's great. That's a big time saver, of course. Now, you might be noticing I've got two layers here, one called land and one called land higher res. Dylan Moriarty drew a couple versions of his Moriarty hand world, shapes, and therefore small scale is zoomed out. I always have to think about this. And Cardonaut on Twitter gave me a great trick. So think of a fish's scales. You're holding a fish far away and his scales look small. You hold that fish close to your face and his scales look big. So small scale is zoomed out and small. Large scale is zoomed in and a close-up look. Isn't that great? Thank you, Cardonaut. Okay, so I'll turn this off. I'll turn on the higher res version. Okay, there's a higher res version. Here's my other lower res version. I want to apply that same technique to this higher res version. So when I'm, zoomed in a little bit closer, it's more precise, more accurate. Boy, do I have to do all that manual work again? That's crazy. No, you don't have to do that. That would be crazy. So what I'm going to do is create a style or save this in my style, a favorite style. So I'll turn off this. I'm going to open up the symbology once again. Now you can do this for any symbol that you make. You could also do it for labels too. So you do all this work styling, you don't have to redo it. So this little burger menu here at the top, I'll expand this and say save symbol to style. It's a lot of S's there. And by default, I have this favorites style. Favorites is this empty style sitting there for me. It's attached to my ArcGIS account. So if I open a different project, all these styles will still be available in this favorites style. I'm going to name this Stipple in my favorites, and I'll hit OK. That's it. It saved it to my favorites. So now all I have to do for any other layer is choose its symbology. There's this tab here called Gallery that shows you symbols that are available in various styles. Now we've got these ArcGIS 2D styles and a 3D style, and there's my favorites style. I can stuff this with all kinds of symbologies that I want to reuse or share, that kind of thing. So here's how fast it is. Boom, I just select that and it'll apply that style to a different polygon layer from the one that I had saved. Isn't that nice? Very fast, very handy, very reusable. Now, if you're curious at all about styles, and I'll do more videos about styles, if you go into the catalog, and if catalog isn't available to you right away, just go to the View tab and activate the catalog view. And it'll show you this, your project structure. One of these options here within the project in your catalog view is styles. If you open styles, you can see it's been seeded with a few styles for you to pick from. So you have a gallery that's populated with options, ArcGIS 2D and some nice color schemes. Cynthia Brewer's Color Brewer color schemes, which are very helpful, very handy. Anyway, that is how you create a pen and ink stippled polygon fill effect in ArcGIS Pro, how you save it as a style to apply to other layers without redoing all of that work manually. Well, thanks for following along with all of that. I hope you give it a shot. If you're feeling a little bit impatient or just want to dip your toe in the stipple waters, in the style waters, I've made and kind of rounded out a style called pen and ink that uses this effect and a couple other effects like crosshatch and that kind of thing. It's got a lot of symbols in it for polygon fills, but also points, lines, and some labels too. So check it out. I'll provide a link in the description below where you can download that, and frankly a bunch of other crazy styles if you feel like it. So man, just try styles, save styles, share styles. Styles is a really great resource, and I hope you give them a go. All right, have a great day. Thanks for following along. Bye bye.